In a small town on the edge of the city, everyone knew Michael Carter as a good man. At 32, he had built a solid life for himself. He worked hard at his job as an architect, owned a modest home with a garden, and had saved enough money to feel secure. But what made Michael happiest was his relationship with Jessica Wells. Jessica entered Michael's life 5 years ago at a friend's birthday party. She walked in wearing a blue dress, and Michael couldn't look away. When their friend introduced them, Jessica smiled, and Michael felt something he had never felt before. They talked all night about their dreams and favorite movies. By the end of the party, both knew something special had started. Their love story seemed perfect to everyone watching. Michael was thoughtful and reliable, always remembering special dates and supporting Jessica's career goals. Jessica was outgoing and ambitious, bringing excitement to Michael's once quiet life. They balanced each other perfectly, or so Michael thought. "They're the real deal," Michael's best friend Tom often said. "The kind of couple that makes you believe in love." After dating for 4 years, Michael decided to propose. He spent weeks planning the perfect moment, nervous but excited about their future together. On a warm summer evening, he took Jessica to the lake where they had their first date. Under a sky full of stars, Michael got down on one knee. "Jessica, you make me happier than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly as he opened a small velvet box. Jessica's eyes filled with tears as she said yes. They celebrated with champagne as they watched the moonlight dance on the water. That night, they stayed up late talking about their wedding and the life they would build together. The following months were filled with wedding plans. They chose a venue, a beautiful old barn renovated for weddings. They picked colors, flowers, and sent invitations to 150 guests. Michael wanted everything to be perfect for Jessica. He even took extra projects at work to pay for the special touches Jessica wanted for their big day. "Nothing is too good for the woman I'm going to spend my life with," Michael told his mother when she worried he was working too hard. Every Sunday, they visited wedding vendors or worked on DIY projects for the ceremony. Jessica seemed happy during these times, though sometimes Michael noticed she seemed distant or checked her phone more than usual. He brushed these moments aside, blaming wedding stress or work pressure. One evening, 9 months into their engagement and 3 months before the wedding, Michael and Jessica had dinner with their parents. Everyone raised glasses to toast the couple. To Michael and Jessica, Jessica's father said, "May your marriage be built on trust, respect, and honesty." Michael noticed Jessica look down at her plate during the toast. Later that night, when they returned home, she received a phone call and stepped outside to take it. She was gone for 15 minutes. When she came back, she said it was work, but Michael saw something in her eyes he couldn't quite place. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "Of course," Jessica answered quickly. "Just some deadline stress. Nothing for you to worry about." Michael nodded and kissed her forehead. He trusted Jessica completely. After all, they were planning forever together. In 3 months, they would stand before their friends and family and promise to love each other for the rest of their lives. Little did Michael know that his perfect love story was about to change forever. 2 weeks after the dinner with their parents, Michael sat alone in his home office. The clock showed 11:30 p.m., but he needed to finish a design proposal due the next morning. His laptop was running slow, so he decided to use Jessica's computer instead. She was already asleep, tired from a long day at her marketing job. Michael gently opened her laptop and began working. As he finished saving his file, a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. It was a text message from someone named Alex. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same hotel as last time? Miss your touch." Michael stared at the message, his heart suddenly beating fast. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe it was for someone else, but the message had appeared on Jessica's laptop, and the preview showed previous messages between them. His hands shook as he clicked on the message app. What he saw next made his stomach drop. There were hundreds of messages between Jessica and Alex, going back almost 8 months. Messages full of "I miss you," and "last night was amazing," and plans to meet in secret. Michael felt like he couldn't breathe. He scrolled through more messages, each one hitting him like a physical blow. "I wish I could wake up next to you every morning," Alex had written. "Michael's working late again tonight. Come over?" Jessica had replied to one message. "Do you ever feel guilty?" Alex asked in another. "Sometimes," Jessica answered. "But when I'm with you, nothing else matters." Michael closed the laptop and put his head in his hands. The woman he loved, the woman he was going to marry in less than 3 months, had been living a double life. While he worked extra hours to pay for their wedding, she had been seeing someone else. Michael didn't sleep that night. He sat in his car until morning, trying to decide what to do. Should he confront Jessica? Should he call off the wedding immediately? The thought of facing their families and friends with this news felt impossible. When he returned home in the morning, Jessica was in the kitchen making coffee. "Where were you?" she asked, looking worried. "I woke up and you weren't here." "I needed to clear my head," Michael said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Work stress." Jessica seemed to accept this explanation easily. Too easily, Michael thought. She kissed him on the cheek and said she had to leave early for a meeting. "Don't forget we have the cake tasting at 5, she reminded him. Michael nodded, watching her gather her things. This woman who moved around their home, who wore his engagement ring, suddenly felt like a stranger to him. After Jessica left, Michael sat down with her laptop again. This time, he looked more carefully. He checked her email and found hotel reservations for dates when she had told him she was working late or visiting her sister. He found photos that made his heart break even more. And then he found something that shocked him, a message where Jessica talked about their wedding. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore," she had written to Alex. "Sometimes I think I should call it off, but Michael is such a good man, he would give me a stable life." The response from Alex came quickly. "But do you love him?" Jessica's reply was slow in coming. "I care about him, but it's different from what I feel with you." Michael closed the laptop. Now he knew the truth. Jessica was marrying him for stability, for the life he could provide, not for love. That afternoon, Michael went to the cake tasting and smiled as Jessica discussed flavors for their wedding cake. Inside, he felt hollow. But as he watched her laugh with the baker, a plan began to form in his mind. If Jessica wanted a stable life, he would show her exactly what she was about to lose. For the next week, Michael lived a double life of his own. During the day, he acted normal around Jessica. He smiled when she talked about wedding plans and nodded when she showed him photos of flower arrangements. At night, when she was asleep, he carefully gathered evidence of her affair. Michael created a special folder on his personal laptop where he saved screenshots of Jessica's messages with Alex. He also made notes of the dates when she had lied about her whereabouts. The more he discovered, the more his heart broke. "I need to know everything," Michael whispered to himself one night as he sat alone in the dark. "I need to understand how deep this goes." On Friday evening, Jessica told Michael she needed to stay late at work for an important project. "I might be very late. Don't wait up," she said, kissing him quickly before heading out the door. Michael nodded and wished her luck with her work. But as soon as her car pulled away, he grabbed his keys. For the first time since discovering the affair, Michael decided to follow her. He kept a safe distance behind Jessica's car as she drove not toward her office, but to a hotel downtown. Michael parked across the street and watched as she checked her makeup in her car mirror before walking inside. 20 minutes later, a man arrived and entered the same hotel. Michael took out his phone and zoomed in to capture a photo. This must be Alex. Sitting in his car, Michael felt a strange calm replace his anger. Now he had a face to go with the name. Alex was tall with dark hair, wearing an expensive suit. He looked confident as he walked into the hotel, like a man who knew exactly what he wanted and how to get it. Michael drove home slowly that night. His mind was clear now. He knew what he needed to do. The next morning, Jessica returned home early, saying she had fallen asleep at the office. Michael made her breakfast and asked about her project. "Oh, it went well," Jessica said, avoiding his eyes. "Just a lot of details to work out." "I'm proud of you," Michael said. "You work so hard." Jessica looked surprised, then smiled and squeezed his hand. "Thank you for understanding. Not every guy would be so supportive of a career-focused woman." Michael nodded. "I want you to be happy." Over the next 2 weeks, Michael continued his secret investigation. He discovered that Jessica and Alex had met at a work conference 11 months ago. Their affair had started just 1 month later, which meant Jessica had been cheating almost the entire time they were engaged. Michael also learned that Alex was married with 2 children. In some messages, Jessica and Alex discussed a future together, but Alex always had excuses for why he couldn't leave his wife yet. She would take the kids, Alex wrote in one message, and half of everything I own. I understand, Jessica had replied. We just need to be patient. One night, Michael found a conversation that hurt more than all the others. It had taken place just after he had proposed to Jessica. He asked me to marry him. Jessica had written to Alex. I said yes. Are you serious? Alex had replied. What about us? Nothing has to change. Michael doesn't suspect anything. And maybe this is for the best. You're not leaving your wife, and I need to think about my future. Reading these words, Michael finally understood. Jessica was using him as a backup plan while waiting for Alex to leave his family. 2 months before the wedding, Jessica's maid of honor threw her a bridal shower. Michael helped set up the party at their house before leaving to give the women privacy. As he drove away, he saw Jessica laughing with her friends, opening gifts for the home she would share with him. That evening, when all the guests had gone, Jessica showed Michael the gifts, excited about their future together. Everyone is so happy for us, she said, putting away a set of expensive wine glasses. Michael smiled and nodded. Yes, they are. They'd all think we're the perfect couple. Jessica didn't notice the sadness in his voice or the determination in his eyes as he looked toward their wedding day, now just 8 weeks away. 6 weeks before the wedding, Michael sat alone in a coffee shop across town where nobody knew him. He needed to think clearly about what to do next. The wedding plans were moving forward quickly. Invitations had been sent out, the venue was paid for, and Jessica's parents had already spent thousands of dollars on the reception. Michael stirred his coffee slowly, considering his options. He could call off the wedding now, but that would mean explaining everything to their families and friends. He could confront Jessica and give her a chance to explain, but the evidence was already clear. Or he could go through with the wedding, pretending everything was fine, and then divorce her later. None of these choices felt right to him. Need a refill? Asked the waitress, interrupting his thoughts. Yes, please, Michael replied. As she poured more coffee, Michael noticed her wedding ring. How long have you been married? He asked. 15 years, she smiled. It hasn't always been easy, but honesty is what keeps us going. That word, honesty, hit Michael hard. The foundation of his relationship with Jessica had been broken by lies. In that moment, sitting in the quiet coffee shop, Michael made his decision. He would go through with the wedding, but on his terms. Jessica had been living a double life at his expense. She had watched him work extra hours to pay for their special day while she sneaked around with Alex. She had accepted congratulations from friends and family while exchanging secret messages with her lover. Michael decided that Jessica needed to face the consequences of her actions, not in private, but in front of everyone who thought they were the perfect couple. That evening, Michael began planning what he called the Wedding Truth Project. First, he needed help from someone he could trust completely. He called his cousin Ryan, who had always been like a brother to him. I need to see you, Michael said, and I need you to keep this between us. They met at Ryan's apartment the next day. Michael showed him everything he had discovered about Jessica's affair. Man, I'm so sorry, Ryan said, shaking his head. What are you going to do? Call it off? No, Michael replied. I'm going to give Jessica exactly what she deserves, a wedding day she'll never forget. Over the next few hours, Michael explained his plan to Ryan. He wanted to create a special video to play during the reception. Not the usual collection of romantic photos, but something that would reveal Jessica's betrayal to everyone present. Are you sure about this? Ryan asked. This is pretty intense. I've never been more sure of anything, Michael answered. She chose to lie to me for almost a year. She chose to make promises to me while breaking them at the same time. Now I'm choosing how this ends. Ryan agreed to help. As a professional video editor, he had the skills to create exactly what Michael needed. Together, they selected messages, photos, and hotel receipts that told the story of Jessica's affair clearly, but without unnecessary cruelty. Michael also contacted the wedding planner, telling her he wanted to prepare a special surprise video for the reception. She was delighted by what she thought was a romantic gesture. We'll need to connect your laptop directly to the projector, she explained. And we'll need about 15 minutes for the presentation. Perfect, Michael said. I want everyone's full attention for this. Meanwhile, Jessica continued planning the wedding, completely unaware of what Michael knew. She seemed more attentive now, perhaps feeling guilty or maybe just excited about the approaching wedding. She suggested they write their own vows. "I want to tell you exactly how I feel about you," she told Michael one night, "in front of everyone we love." Michael agreed, thinking how ironic her words were. "That sounds perfect," he said. "I want to be completely honest with you too." 5 weeks before the wedding, Jessica's parents hosted a dinner for both families. Everyone raised glasses to toast the happy couple. Jessica's father spoke about the importance of commitment and trust in marriage. "These two young people have a strong foundation," he said proudly. "We couldn't ask for a better man for our daughter." Michael smiled and thanked him, while Jessica squeezed his hand under the table. For a moment, Michael almost wavered in his resolve. Then his phone buzzed with a message from Ryan. "Project file complete. Ready when you are." Michael's determination returned. The countdown to the wedding day, and to Jessica's reckoning, had begun. 4 weeks before the wedding, both Michael and Jessica were busy with final preparations. Jessica spent hours on the phone confirming details with vendors while Michael quietly put the finishing touches on his own plans. "I've decided on the song for our first dance," Jessica told Michael one evening as they sat on the couch. She looked happy and excited, showing no signs of guilt or doubt. "What did you choose?" Michael asked, maintaining his calm facade. "Forever Yours" by James Miller, she replied. "The lyrics are perfect for us." Michael nodded and smiled. The song was about eternal love and faithfulness. The irony wasn't lost on him. That night, Jessica's phone buzzed with a text. She quickly grabbed it and turned away from Michael to read the message. Her fingers moved rapidly as she typed a response, and Michael noticed her hiding a small smile. "Work again?" Michael asked casually. "Yes," Jessica replied too quickly. "The Johnson campaign is giving us headaches." Michael pretended to believe her. "Don't work too hard," he said. "The wedding is getting close." Later, when Jessica went to take a shower, Michael checked his own phone. Ryan had sent him the final version of the video for the reception. Michael watched it alone in the kitchen, nodding with grim satisfaction. Everything was ready. 3 weeks before the wedding, Jessica started acting strangely. She became more attentive to Michael, suggesting date nights and bringing him small gifts. Once, she even prepared his favorite dinner, something she hadn't done in months. "What's all this for?" Michael asked as she served him homemade lasagna. "Can't I do something nice for my future husband?" Jessica replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Michael wondered if she was feeling guilty or if she was having second thoughts about their marriage. Either way, it was too late for her attempts at being a loving fiancé to change his mind. 2 weeks before the wedding, Michael had his final tuxedo fitting. His best man, Tom, came along for moral support. As they waited in the shop, Tom seemed concerned. "Are you okay, man?" Tom asked. "You've seemed different lately." "Just nervous about the big day," Michael replied with a practiced smile. "That's normal," Tom assured him. "But if something's wrong, you can talk to me, right?" For a moment, Michael considered telling Tom everything. But he decided against it. The fewer people who knew about his plan, the better. "Everything's fine," Michael said. "Just want it all to be perfect." 10 days before the wedding, Jessica told Michael she needed to go out of town for an overnight business trip. "It's last minute, but I can't get out of it," she explained. "Which client?" Michael asked, testing her. Jessica hesitated for just a second. "The Johnson campaign. Final preparations for their product launch." Michael knew there was no business trip. He had seen messages between Jessica and Alex planning a last special night before the wedding. Still, he kissed her goodbye and wished her a good trip. While Jessica was away, Michael drove to the wedding venue to check on some details. He met with the AV technician who would be handling the sound and visuals for the reception. "I have a special video I want to play during my speech," Michael explained. "It's a surprise for my bride." "No problem," the technician assured him. "We'll make sure it runs perfectly." Michael handed him a backup copy of the video on a USB drive. "This is really important to me," he said. "I want everyone to see it clearly." 1 week before the wedding, guests began arriving from out of town. Michael's parents hosted a small dinner for family members who had traveled far. Jessica charmed everyone, playing the role of the excited bride-to-be perfectly. You two are just wonderful together, Michael's aunt said. I can see how much you love each other. Jessica smiled and leaned against Michael. He's the best thing that ever happened to me, she said. As the evening ended, Michael's mother pulled him aside. She looked at him with concerned eyes. Is everything all right, sweetheart? She asked. You don't seem like yourself. Michael hugged her tightly. Everything will work out exactly as it should, Mom, he said. I promise. 3 days before the wedding, Michael looked at the calendar on his wall. The date of their wedding was circled in red. Soon, the truth would come out. Soon, Jessica would understand the consequences of betrayal. The day before the wedding arrived with clear skies and perfect weather. The rehearsal was scheduled for 4:00 p.m., followed by the rehearsal dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. Michael woke up early that morning and went for a long run, trying to clear his head and prepare himself for what was coming. When he returned home, Jessica was on the phone, speaking in a low voice in the bedroom. Michael stopped in the hallway, listening. I can't talk long, Jessica whispered. He might come back any minute. No, I don't think he suspects anything. Yes, I'll see you next week after we get back from the honeymoon. I know, I'll miss you too. Michael quietly walked back to the front door, opened it, and then closed it loudly. I'm home, he called out. Jessica appeared from the bedroom, her phone nowhere in sight. How was your run? She asked with a bright smile. Good, Michael replied. Just needed to burn off some pre-wedding nerves. Are you nervous? Jessica asked, wrapping her arms around him. Don't be. Tomorrow will be perfect. Michael looked into her eyes, wondering how she could lie so easily. Yes, it will be a day to remember, he said. By 4:00, everyone had gathered at the church for the rehearsal. The pastor walked them through the ceremony, explaining where to stand and when to speak. Jessica's parents watched proudly, while Michael's family smiled from the front pew. And then I'll say, you may kiss the bride, the pastor explained, and after the kiss, I'll present you as Mr. and Mrs. Carter for the first time. Jessica squeezed Michael's hand. I can't wait, she whispered. Michael just nodded, thinking about how different the actual day would be from what everyone expected. During the rehearsal dinner, speeches were made and toasts were given. Jessica's father stood up first, raising his glass. When Jessica first brought Michael home, I knew he was special, he said. He's honest, hardworking, and he truly loves my daughter. I couldn't ask for a better son-in-law. Michael accepted the toast with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Tom gave a short speech next, telling funny stories about Michael's college days and ending with sincere words about love and commitment. To Michael and Jessica, Tom concluded, May your marriage be built on trust and honesty. Michael noticed Jessica shift uncomfortably in her seat at the word honesty. She quickly regained her composure and raised her glass with everyone else. After dinner, as guests began to leave, Jessica pulled Michael into a quiet corner. I'm going to stay at my parents' house tonight, she said. You know, tradition and all that. The bride and groom shouldn't see each other before the wedding. Of course, Michael agreed. I'll see you at the altar. Jessica kissed him softly. I love you, she said, looking into his eyes. For a brief moment, Michael almost believed her. Then he remembered all the messages, all the lies, all the secret meetings with Alex. I'll see you tomorrow, he said instead of returning the words of love. Back at home, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room, looking through old photos of himself and Jessica from happier times. Had she loved him then, or had she been pretending all along? Around midnight, his phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Everything set for tomorrow. USB backup in place. You sure about this? Michael typed back, yes, no turning back now. He put down his phone and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street. Tomorrow would change everything. Jessica thought she was getting a wedding and a husband. Instead, she would get the truth and consequences. Early the next morning, the day of the wedding, Michael's parents came to help him get ready. His mother straightened his tie while his father gave him advice about married life. Communication is key, his father said. Always be honest with each other, even when it's difficult. I agree, Michael replied. Honesty is everything. By noon, Michael was dressed in his tuxedo, ready to leave for the church. Tom arrived to drive him, bringing a bottle of expensive whiskey for a pre-wedding toast. To your last moments as a free man, Tom joked, pouring small glasses for both of them. Michael raised his glass. To truth, he said simply, and drank the whiskey in one swallow. As they drove to the church, Michael looked out the window at the passing scenery. A chapter of his life was ending today, but not in the way anyone expected. He felt calm now, certain he was doing the right thing. The church came into view, decorated with white flowers and ribbons. Cars filled the parking lot as guests arrived in their finest clothes. Everything looked perfect for a beautiful wedding. Michael stepped out of the car, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the church doors. It was time. The church was filled with flowers, candles, and nearly 200 guests dressed in their finest clothes. Michael stood at the altar with Tom beside him, watching as the bridesmaids walked down the aisle one by one. Everyone smiled, thinking they were witnessing the beginning of a beautiful marriage. Only Michael knew the truth. "You okay?" Tom whispered, noticing Michael's tight expression. "Never better," Michael replied, his eyes fixed on the church doors. The music changed to the traditional wedding march, and all the guests stood up. The doors opened, revealing Jessica on her father's arm. She looked beautiful in her white dress, her face glowing behind a delicate veil. Several guests gasped at how lovely she appeared. Jessica's father walked her slowly down the aisle. Michael watched her approach, thinking about how different this moment felt from what he had once imagined. He had dreamed of seeing his bride walk toward him and feeling nothing but joy and love. Instead, he felt a cold determination. When Jessica reached the altar, her father kissed her cheek and placed her hand in Michael's. "Take care of my little girl," he said with emotion in his voice. "I'll give her exactly what she deserves," Michael replied quietly. The ceremony began as planned. The pastor spoke about love, commitment, and the sacred bond of marriage. Jessica and Michael faced each other, holding hands as they had practiced. To everyone watching, they looked like the perfect couple. "Michael and Jessica have chosen to write their own vows," the pastor announced. "Jessica, would you like to go first?" Jessica nodded and took a small paper from her maid of honor. Her voice was clear and steady as she began to read. "Michael, from the moment we met, I knew you were special. You have shown me what true love means through your kindness, your patience, and your unwavering support. Today, I promise to be faithful to you, to stand by your side through good times and bad, and to love you for all the days of my life." A few tears slipped down Jessica's cheeks as she finished her vows. Guests sighed at the beautiful words, not knowing they were empty promises from a woman who had already broken them. "Michael," the pastor said, "your vows, please." Michael took a deep breath. This was the moment he had prepared for. He looked directly into Jessica's eyes. "Jessica, when I met you, I thought I had found the person I would spend my life with. I trusted you completely. I believed in our love and our future together." Jessica smiled, not yet realizing something was wrong. Michael continued, his voice growing stronger. "I promised myself I would always be honest with you. That's why I can't stand here today and make vows I know will be broken." A confused murmur spread through the church. Jessica's smile faltered as Michael kept speaking. "I've learned that a marriage must be built on trust and honesty. Unfortunately, our relationship has neither." "Michael, what are you doing?" Jessica whispered, her face growing pale. "I'm telling the truth," Michael replied, "something you should have tried." The pastor stepped forward, looking concerned. "Perhaps we should take a moment." "No," Michael said firmly. "I need to finish." He turned back to Jessica. "I know about Alex. I know about the hotels, the lies, the messages. I know everything." Jessica's face drained of all color. She gripped Michael's hands tightly. "Please," she whispered. "Not here. Not now." "Yes, here. Yes, now," Michael said. "You chose to lie here, in front of these people. You should face the consequences here, too." Gasps and whispers filled the church as guests began to understand what was happening. Jessica's mother covered her mouth in shock, while her father stood up from his seat, confusion on his face. "I don't want to hurt anyone more than necessary," Michael continued, "but I cannot marry someone who has been unfaithful throughout our engagement." Jessica began to cry, real tears now. "Michael, please, I'm sorry. We can talk about this privately." "We're past that point," Michael said. He turned to the stunned guests. "I apologize for bringing you all here under false pretenses, but the reception will still happen as planned. I prepared something special to show everyone exactly why today will not be a wedding after all." With those words, Michael gently removed Jessica's hands from his and stepped away from the altar. The perfect wedding had just become the perfect disaster, and the surprise at the reception was still to come. The church emptied slowly, filled with shocked whispers and confused faces. Jessica's parents quickly took her to a side room where she collapsed in tears. Michael walked alone to his car, ignoring the stares and questions from guests. He drove directly to the reception venue, where everything was set up for a celebration that would now have a very different tone. "Is everything okay?" asked the event manager when Michael arrived alone. "Where is the bride?" "There's been a change of plans," Michael replied calmly. "But the reception will continue. I need to make sure the video equipment is ready." Despite the dramatic scene at the church, most guests made their way to the reception hall. Some came out of concern for Michael, others from curiosity about what would happen next. A few came simply because they had traveled far and wanted to get their money's worth from expensive wedding gifts. Michael stood at the entrance, thanking people for coming. He remained composed, though inside he felt a strange mix of pain and relief. The truth was finally coming out. An hour after the church disaster, Jessica arrived with her parents. Her makeup was fixed, but her eyes were red from crying. She walked straight to Michael. "Please don't do this," she begged quietly. "Whatever you're planning, don't. You've made your point." "I haven't even started," Michael replied. "You lied to me for almost a year. You watched me work extra hours to pay for this wedding while you were with him. Everyone deserves to know who you really are." Before Jessica could respond, Tom clinked a glass to get everyone's attention. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the head table. "Since things have taken an unexpected turn today," Tom said awkwardly, "Michael would like to say a few words." Michael stood and walked to the center of the room. The silence was heavy as he took the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I know today has been confusing and probably uncomfortable for many of you. I'm sorry for that." He paused, looking around at the faces watching him. "Most of you have known Jessica and me as the perfect couple. You've celebrated our engagement, given us gifts, and come here today to witness our marriage. You deserve to know why that marriage isn't happening." Michael nodded to the AV technician, who pressed a button. The large screen at the front of the room lit up with the video Ryan had helped create. It began with photos of Michael and Jessica together, smiling and happy. Then text appeared on the screen, "While planning our wedding," followed by screenshots of messages between Jessica and Alex. Their dates were clearly visible, all during their engagement period. The room was completely silent as everyone watched. The evidence was clear, but not overly graphic or cruel. Michael had carefully selected messages that showed the affair without embarrassing details. Hotel receipts appeared next, alongside Jessica's excuses to Michael about working late or visiting her sister on those same dates. Jessica stood frozen, watching her secret life displayed for everyone to see. Her parents looked devastated. Friends and family members turned to stare at her with shock and disappointment. The video ended with a simple message: "I deserve honesty. We all do." When the lights came back on, Michael spoke again. "I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it because lies shouldn't be rewarded. Jessica wasn't just betraying me, she was lying to everyone in this room who believed in our relationship." He set down the microphone and walked toward the exit. As he passed Jessica, he stopped briefly. "The honeymoon tickets are in your name," he said quietly. "You can still go. I won't be needing them." With that, Michael walked out of the reception hall with his head held high. Several friends followed him, including Tom, who put a supportive hand on his shoulder. "What now?" Tom asked as they stood in the parking lot. Michael looked up at the sky, feeling strangely peaceful. "Now I start over, with the truth." Inside the hall, Jessica faced the consequences of her choices. Her carefully planned future had collapsed. The man she had taken for granted was gone, and the lover who had promised her everything was nowhere to be found. 2 weeks later, Michael sold the house he had bought for their future together. He moved to a new city for a fresh start. Sometimes at night, he still thought about Jessica and wondered if she had learned anything from that day. He never regretted his decision. The wedding that wasn't became the beginning of a new, honest life for Michael, one where truth mattered more than appearances. And somewhere, Jessica would forever remember the wedding day surprise she never saw coming.